Evil Witch's Daughter, Chapter 2. Amaranth sat on a wooden bench behind iron bars in the basement level of the Crystal Crypt. Grimace came down the stairs glaring at her. With his eyes squinted and brow furrowed, he asked her, "For your destiny?" She lifted her head, bit her bottom lip, glared back at him. Standing up, she asked him, "Do I get the whole kingdom of Marith? Is it truly all mine?" "You will rule with me, but only if you are truly with me," he replied and gave her a smirk. "That means you have to give up Ojulor. You have to stay here, but of course in a better room. Think of what all we can do. Think of how the mystical creatures of the forest will be at your command." With her hands on her hips, she flung back her hair and walked up to the bars. Amaranth grabbed the bars and leaned into them. "Well, I think we can work something out." He unlocked the door and she pushed it open. "Show me to my room. I want to make sure this is somewhere that I approve of. At Risingshire Castle, I had a fabulous room. Plus, I had Norella. Well, I have a cat. I would like a black one." Puggle, the goblin, stood at the top of the stairs. "Are you going to show me my room?" Amaranth asked him. He waited for her to get to the top of the stairs. He didn't say a word, but he reached for her hand. She pulled back. "I don't think so. You don't touch me. You just lead the way." Shaking his head, he continued walking to her room. On occasion, he would trip over his own feet, as they were slightly too big and made him clumsy. When they arrived at her room, he lifted his hand and pointed into the room. "Yes, finally a room for me. You are awfully quiet. What is up with that? Do you speak?" she asked. Puggle shook his head no in response. He had been in a fight when he was younger with a wizard that took his voice away from him. "Oh, you poor thing. We'll have to see about what we can do about that. Although it is nice that you can't talk back." Crumez walked up to her. "Well, does this suit you? Are you pleased with your room?" "I am. I think we will get along just fine. Now, I need a black cat. I cannot go without a pet, and we didn't bring Norella with me." He pointed into the room, and she turned to see what he was pointing at. A sleek black cat walked across the bed. Amaranth looked back at Crumez, gave him a devilish smile, and went over to the cat. Petting her, she sat down on the bed and motioned for them to go away. Outside the crypt, the dragon sat guarding the entry. Paimon looked at Oizu. "I thought we were putting her away. I thought she was evil, and this was going to get rid of her." "Obviously, we were tricked. Sounds like she's going to be ruling with Crumez instead of being a prisoner. He certainly changed his tune quickly once she got here." "You were inquiring about my motives," Crumez said to them as he walked out of the crypt. They both sat silently and lowered their heads in shame. "I don't believe I answered to you, but that you answered to me." He pointed to them and then himself. "You don't worry about what is going on inside the Crystal Crypt. You guard the entry. Although I do not believe you will have to worry about Ojulor coming to rescue once I send Garolet back with a note telling him that she is staying and no longer wants to be with them." He handed him the note, and off he flew through the Caligan forest. The mystical creatures watched him as he sped past them. Within minutes, he reached the castle, which was being guarded by Termidor and Freve. He dropped the note by their feet and flew off back into the forest. Back at the Crystal Crypt, Amaranth sat with her new cat. "I'm going to call you Valora. She rubbed up against her, purred and meowed. Oh, how disappointing. I was hoping that you could have a real conversation. I'd love for you to go spy on Crumaz and let me know what he's really up to. Why would he bring me here the way he did? Just to get me to a nice room. He's up to something. I just don't know what yet. Flora got down off the bed and scampered out the doorway. Really? I hope she comes back. Plus, where is the door? No privacy in here, and it's really dark, she says out loud to herself. She looked around and found some candles to light. Although once the room was more well lit and she could see more than just the path to and from the doorway, she was a little uneasy. All around her were black books, dark bottles, and pots. I think I know where he's going with this. He wants me to do black magic for him. What happens if I don't? I bet he'll put me back in the dungeon. Although it's not like this is a huge improvement. She went up to the books and grabbed one, placed it on the table, and began to read. If he expects me to do something, I should probably read up on what he wants done. She bit her lower lip again as she was reading. Geralt returned to the crypt entrance where the other dragons sat. All delivered. I did not stick around for a return note. He can get his own dragons to do that. Very good. I believe I wrote a very convincing note. He turned and walked back into the crypt. As he walked past Amaranth's room, he noticed she had lit some candles. He walked right in and up to where she was reading. So, how did the books look? Does it look like something you'll be able to help with? Exactly what are you expecting me to do? I expect you to create potions that will make all the mystical and grassland creatures obedient to only my demands. Next, we will be taking over Risingshire Castle. You will get your castle back, but Odulor will not be in charge. I will be. This is the ultimate goal. Are you in, or do you prefer these accommodations? She looked at him, took a deep breath, bit her lip, and answered, Doesn't look like I have much of a choice. It's either do or not really good options. However, being that this will help me, then I will help you. Excellent choice. No matter how you came up with it. He turned and walked away. Amaranth sat staring at her book. What a choice. I will do what I have to, but he wants me to get rid of Odulor? Seriously? I don't think I can do that, she thought to herself. Amaranth did not dare speak her thought out loud. Hours went by, and she didn't hear from him or that mute goblin, and walked out of her room. Before she got too far, she noticed a bunch of tunnels. Which way should she go? Crumaz popped around the corner. Where are you going? I figured I'd go for a walk and see where I am. I know that it's the Crystal Crypt, but I've never been here. You have been here. Your mother brought you here when you were younger. For those that are not a part of Risingshire Castle, this is where we live. We rule from here. You got spoiled over in the castle. Glaring at him, she tossed back her black hair, spun around, and walked away. I am not dealing with him right now. I will figure this place out on my own. He and that goblin can stay out of my way, she thought to herself. Amaranth started down a tunnel. Valora walked up next to her and stayed by her side. The cat continued to stay with her wherever she went. Down the one tunnel, it got darker and darker, and then she spotted glowing eyes looking back at her. She stopped in her tracks. Valora also stopped. The dampness started to creep upon her. The eyes started to move towards her, and they got closer and closer. They got close enough so that Amaranth was able to see that they were bats. She rolled her eyes, turned around, and headed back to the start of the tunnel. This is crazy. These tunnels don't lead anywhere. I'm not going to be walking in the dark. I'll have to bring some light with me. At least I have Laura with me, though. They arrived at the tunnel entrance, and this time the dragons were there guarding it. I think you made a wrong turn. You'll have to go back before Crewmaze finds you out here, Primate told them. Amaranth let out a big huff, turned around, and went back into the tunnel. I can't believe this. I don't remember passing any other way out of this crazy tunnel system. Valora scampered ahead of her. She had to run to keep up with her. An opening appeared to her right, and they both entered into it. She looked ahead and saw more light. Puggled strolled from an entryway and stood in the middle of the tunnel. She heard something behind her, so she looked over her shoulder to the left and saw a bunch of eyes following her. This time, she knew they were the bats. They had followed them. She walked up to Puggled. Okay, so how do I get back to my room? He looked up at her and put his hand out. She took it and followed him as he led her back to her room. Crewmaze was in her room waiting for her. You just couldn't resist wandering around. What did you think I was going to do? Just sit around? I expected that you would get reading and figuring out what your mother was working on when she was here. This is what you need to be doing. She rolled her eyes at him. I have no idea what she was working on, and exactly how do you think I can figure that out? Try reading the book that belonged to her. This was her room. The only thing I know is that she was working on something that would ultimately help her to rule the Amaranth Kingdom. That's the end of Chapter 2. Chapter 3 will be read next week, so join us again. Be sure to subscribe so that you know when these get posted.